Grab your shovels and join the swarm as we upgrade the Vraska Regal Gorgon Planeswalker deck. Don't really grab the shovels though. The second of our two Guilds of Ravnica Planeswalker decks is Vraska Regal Gorgon. She leads the Golgari Swarm with two archetypes that we're going to build around, Graveyard Matters and Tokens/Sacrifice. We're also going to keep these decks standard legal so we can take them out to a Friday Night Magic if we want to. When it comes to graveyard themes, there are two important parts to make sure that the strategy hums: graveyard fillers and graveyard payoffs. The current list has some good payoff cards, but not many enablers outside of Glow Spore Shaman. We could add in Stitcher's Supplier, which is a 1/1 for 1 that puts cards into our graveyard both when it enters the battlefield and when it dies.
But does it bring all the boys to the yard?
Another set of cards to consider are Charnel Troll and Erstwhile Trooper. Each of these creatures has an ability that requires us to discard a creature card as part of the cost, all while pumping themselves up. Of course, Charnel Troll does require that we exile creature cards from our graveyard during our upkeep, but we can always choose to sacrifice it if we want to. Underrealm Lich is another great way to fill our graveyard quickly. The first ability lets us choose which cards we want out of the top 3 cards of our library every time we would draw, and then we get to put the other 2 into the graveyard right where we want them. It also has a built-in way to protect itself from certain removal, allowing us to pay 4 life to give it indestructible until end of turn. Okay, now we have creature cards in our graveyard, but how do we take advantage of that? Undergrowth is a mechanic from Guilds of Ravnica that cares about how many creature cards we currently have in our graveyard, and is featured on a few cards in the deck already, like Lotlith Giant, Kraul Foragers, and Rhizome Lurcher. We should also look at Hatchery Spider. It's a bit costly at 7 mana, but it more than makes up for it. Not only is it a 5/7 with reach, but it also lets us put another green permanent card onto the battlefield based on how many creatures we already have in our graveyard. Now, sometimes we end up putting our best creatures into the graveyard trying to set ourselves up, but never fear, we are Golgari, there are plenty of ways to return our creatures. Golgari Find Broker and Find Finality both get cards from our graveyard and put them back into our hand, while Rise from the Grave and Gruesome Menagerie will put our creatures directly onto the battlefield. Boneyard Parlay is another fun option. It lets us pick 5 cards from all graveyards, because maybe our opponent has an awesome creature that we want to try out. Thanks, buddy. Another great Undergrowth card is Izani Thousand-Eyed, which makes 1/1 insect tokens when it enters the battlefield. Not only does it work well in our graveyard-themed deck, it's also great in our second archetype, creating token creatures that can be sacrificed for an advantage or used to overwhelm our opponents. If we're looking to build up a token army, Dominaria is a great set to look at in our colors. There are several cards in both black and green that make Saproling tokens or have us sacrifice creatures to gain an advantage. Spore Swarm and Saproling Migration provide us with multiple tokens off of one spell, while Fungal Plots can make tokens from the creatures already in our graveyard. Spore Crown Thallid is a low-cost creature that can help to turn our Saproling tokens into big threats in a hurry. With all these Saprolings, we would also be hard-pressed not to mention the legendary fungus, Slimefoot the Stowaway. For 4 generic mana, we get a 1/1 Saproling, and whenever a Saproling token dies, either in battle or if we sacrifice them, our opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. Outside of Dominaria, we also can't forget Tendershoot Dryad. Not only does it create a Saproling token at the beginning of each upkeep, which includes all of our opponents if we're playing a multiplayer game, it also helps to pump our tokens once we have the City's Blessing. Another card that benefits from our tokens dying or being sacrificed is Poison Tip Archer. Not only does it cause our opponents to lose life when any creature dies, it also has Reach and Death Touch, which should make them think twice about attacking into us. Now that we have our token army, let's take a look at some cards that will let us sacrifice them for value. Thallid Soothsayer and Thallid Omnivore are both cards that get pumped up by Spore Crown Thallid and will let us draw cards or gain life respectively. Plaguecrafter basically lets us upgrade one of our tokens' power and toughness while forcing our opponent to sacrifice a creature or planeswalker or discard a card. We can also draw some extra cards while sacrificing a creature with both Costly Plunder and Blood Divination. And if we're looking for a bit of removal, Vicious Offering works okay on its own, but gets much better if we sacrifice one of our creatures. while Severed Strands kills just about anything our opponent can put on the battlefield as long as we have a creature to sacrifice. Speaking of removal, it wouldn't be a Golgari deck if we didn't talk about Murder. Murder can destroy just about anything on our opponent's side for only 3 mana, and it's at instant speed. If our opponent plays some troublesome indestructible creatures though, Necrotic Wound is a good addition for our Graveyard Matters deck, as the -1/-1 gets around the indestructible. The deck also has 2 copies of Prey Upon, which will be better in the Graveyard Matters deck, as we don't really care if our creatures die as part of the spell, but it's not that great in a token style deck. Several of the cards that we've looked at so far tend to be a bit higher on the mana curve, so we may want to add in some ramp spells to help us cast them reliably. Grow from the Ashes lets us grab 1 land early, or 2 lands if we pay the kicker cost. Skitterine Surveyor and District Guide both help us to block some of our opponent's early creatures while grabbing us a land. And while it's a bit of a long-term investment, Thaumatic Compass can search up basic lands and eventually transform into a land that will help remove our opponent's biggest creatures from combat. Planeswalkers tend to be powerful, but a bit pricey. We'll most likely want to keep the Vraska Regal Gorgon in the deck, but we could also look at adding Vraska Relic Seeker or Vraska Golgari Queen if our budget permits. As far as lands go, this deck includes 22 basics, 10 forests, and 12 swamps, along with 4 Golgari Guild Gates that add both colors. To better fix our mana and assure that we have the right amount of each color when we need it, we can add more lands that add both of our colors. Foul Orchard is similar to Golgari Guildgate, but it can't be searched for with District Guide. With so many basics in the deck, we could also look to Woodland Cemetery, which has a high chance of entering the battlefield untapped. Finally, Overgrown Tomb can enter the battlefield untapped if we pay 2 life, but it does have a slightly higher price tag. And that's our upgrades for the Vraska Regal Gorgon Planeswalker deck. I'm Jeremy Knoll, and I hope we gave you some ideas on where to take these decks. If you have any other ideas, let us know in the comments, and as always, good luck and have fun.